Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of the Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about Ireland, and with St. Patrick's Day coming up here on Monday in the United States, it's always kind of amusing to me to see how many people bring out their Irish. Maybe just a little bit of our ancestry is Irish, maybe a whole lot of our ancestry is Irish, but on that particular day, everybody seems to embrace Irish culture and certainly enjoy the holiday. So today we're going to just talk about how to discover some more information about your Irish ancestors in Ireland and some of the tools and resources available to you on Ancestry.com to explore your Irish heritage a little bit more. With that introduction, let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing you're going to want to do is realize that successful Irish research begins with knowing where in Ireland your family originated. That is probably the single hardest step in Irish research. Just knowing that they're from Ireland is very insufficient if you want to make sure that you've got the right people. And there's a few reasons for that. One is because, well, the main reason is just because there's so many common names. Not a lot of variation in given names, only a certain subset of surnames. And so you have to know where in Ireland your family is from so that you know that you're at least narrowed down to the right location. County at the very least, but always be on the lookout for a town name when you're doing research as well. Now, we have provided you with a few resources to be able to discover that. I have done 2 previous videos about Irish research. I think one of them is called Beginning Irish Research, where I talk in depth about the resources available to you to find that place of origin. We also have created, Ancestry.com has created a landing page, an Irish research landing page. You're going to find it at Ancestry.com/Irish. And there are a couple of things on there. I'll show it to you in just a moment, but let me just point out that there are a couple of things you're going to want to pay particular attention to. Anne has put together a 5-minute find video called Finding Irish Origins. I would strongly encourage you to watch that. She walks quickly through some of those records that will help you find the county or town of origin. We also have included an Irish research guide that has 10 tips for locating place of origin in Ireland. So here is what that particular landing page looks like. If you just scroll down past this header, you're going to see that 5-minute find video, and you're also going to see a link to download the research guide for the 10 places to look for your Irish ancestors. Juliana's done a great job of putting this together with some really detailed information and some screenshots and some examples of all the different places where you could find specific locations in Ireland where your family may have been. So spend some time with those 2 resources, because knowing where in Ireland your family originated is the key to successful Irish research. And most of those clues are going to be discovered in records here in the United States. So that's an important part of this research. Next, you can then, once you know where in Ireland your family is from, explore some of the Irish record collections on Ancestry.com. Now, you could just do global searches, but when you do a global search on Ancestry.com, you're searching all 13 billion records on our website. If you know you're looking for Irish research, go straight to those Irish records. We've provided you with a lot of different ways to get into those records. So on this Irish landing page, you'll see here there is a search box that will search all of the records on Ancestry, but it will give priority to those Irish records so that they filter to the top of your list. Another way into those Irish records, if you click on the search button here and scroll down past that search box, you're going to see a map. You can select the UK and Ireland, and then you can select Ireland or Northern Ireland, depending on where your family is from. That will give you lists of databases that are specific to that part of Ireland. You can see here that Ancestry.com has millions and millions of records for Ireland. Particularly, the big records are going to be those civil registration indexes. So Ireland started keeping birth, marriage, and death records. Well, they started keeping birth and death records in 1864, started keeping marriage records in 1845, and those go through 1958. So 9.4 million birth records, 6.6 million death records, 4.5 million marriage records, and those are excellent resources. Now remember, they are just indexes. The country has not given us the certificates to post online. They have given us the indexes. Those indexes then can allow you to order the original registration entry to see what additional information is included on that. So those are the civil registration. Now there are also earlier records, but those earlier records are going to be church records. And so let's just take a look at another way to locate records about Ireland. And one of my favorite and most used resources on Ancestry.com is the card catalog. So you find it by hovering over search. Card catalog is your bottom option there. And that's going to tell us that Ancestry.com has 31,655 databases, which when you do a global search on Ancestry.com, that's what you're searching, is all 13 billion records in all of those databases. But if I know that I'm looking for something specific, I'm just going to come in here, type in Ireland. This is going to tell me that Ancestry.com has 137 databases that contain Ireland somewhere in the title of that database. I can then sort that list alphabetically, or, and this is what I'm going to do today, with the most recently added collections at the top of the list. So just yesterday, Ancestry.com added a large collection. It's about a little more than 500,000 records of Catholic baptismal, marriage, and burial registers. And so those new records then are going to float to the top of the list if you sort that way. You can see there's a couple of other new databases added, including this one, which is a marriage database with 1.4 million records in it. So lots of really great records. We've also got links to both the 1901 and 1911 Irish censuses. Those, anytime you see the word web at the beginning of a database on Ancestry.com, that means it's going to take you to somewhere else in the internet. It's not a record collection that Ancestry.com has, but we do have the ability to search it so that we can tell if there's a record out there somewhere that you're interested in. So the couple of web links to the 1901 and 1911 Irish censuses. Just keep going down this list. You're going to see we have records that date back into the early 1800s, some into the late 1700s. Particularly newspapers are really prevalent back in the late 17 and early 1800s and are a good resource. But most of the records for Ireland are going to be late 1800s to early 1900s. And part of that is because of some of the fires and the destruction that has happened to a lot of their records. So we have what we have, and hopefully that will give you enough of an insight into where your family is and who your family might be that you can do some of this research. So let's look at some of these Catholic records that we just placed online. The first one is the Catholic birth and baptismal registers. These date back to 1763 and go all the way through 1912. So really large time period coverage. However, if you've spent any time with me, you know that before you start searching a database, you should always scroll down past that search box and read a couple of things. The first one is the source information. That will tell you where Ancestry.com obtained these images, these documents, who the original source is. And then read this database description. That will include information about what the coverage is for this particular collection. So in this case, there are 73 parishes in Ireland that are included in this collection, and we have listed every one of those parishes. So if your family was from one of those parishes, then chances are there's some records here. But if they're not from one of these parishes, I don't want you getting frustrated or wasting your time searching this database if what you're looking for doesn't even exist in this particular database. So always read the description so that you know what is and is not included in this particular set of records. Now, we also have provided in this case, and this is really important, a Latin glossary or a link to a Latin glossary in that database description. And the reason that is important is because these records are in Latin. Now, don't let that scare you. We'll look at a couple here in just a minute, but it does mean that you need to know what some of these words are. And so you can use this Latin glossary here if you would like, or one of the resources that I use all the time is Google Translate. If you just go to translate.google.com, they actually have a Latin language option. So I can come in here and I can select Latin, and I want to translate Latin into English, and then anytime I find a word on the document that I don't understand, I can type it in and it will translate the word for me. I'll show you that in action here in just a minute. So if I scroll back up now to my search box, once I've looked and determined that my parish is indeed included, there's a little something else that I like to do whenever I start searching a new database. It's so that I can understand a couple of things. First, that I can understand what the coverage of the database is, and second, so I can get a little bit of a feel for how the records are arranged. If I know how the records are arranged and what has been indexed, I'm likely to be more successful in my searches. Every set of record collections on Ancestry.com has come from different sources, and so it contains different information. They're indexed in different fashions. There's a lot of variability in records. And so just doing some simple searches allows me to uncover some of that before I start looking for what it is I'm looking for. So in this case, I'm going to look for a family from County Carlow, particularly this location, and I'm going to go ahead and mark that exact. I'm not going to search for anything else, just that location. I want to see how many people in this database are from that particular location, and I'm going to click search. And that's going to tell me that there are 13,387 records for this specific location. Again, that's just so I can get a feel for how the records are arranged, what kinds of things I should be looking for. Most often, it also is going to show me how my search results are going to be returned. In this case, it looks like the search results are chronological based on that baptismal date. And if I scroll down a little bit further, you're going to see some of these records, there's no last name listed. Some of them just have a first name. And so that's important to know if I'm looking for a particular set of records. And if I jump to another section in this particular set of records, what I'm really going to see is not that they're arranged chronologically, but that they're arranged by last name and then chronologically within that. So that first set of records looked chronological because there were no last names. Now that I'm into the B's, I can see how they're actually arranged alphabetically. So that's just a quick search I a lot of times will do when I'm starting with a new record collection. I want to understand how it's organized, how my search results are going to be displayed, and what kinds of people I'm looking for in that particular location. Once I've done that, then I can go back and actually do the search that I'm interested in for the particular set of records that I'm looking for. So this again is birth and baptismal registers. I'm looking for a particular individual here. Scroll down just a little bit. Okay, here is Michael Conley, and you can see that this index page lists quite a bit of information. It lists that he was born on the 3rd of February. He was baptized on the 4th of February, 1885. It lists a baptismal place, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. Every once in a while I'll listen to, I have some friends from Ireland, and I'll listen to them pronounce some of the names of these locations, and it's just musical, but I try to reproduce it, and it doesn't ever quite sound right. So we have a specific location as well as the county, and then we have names of parents, which is fantastic, but always, always, always view that original record where it also exists. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and you're going to see here the original record. If I scroll up or drag my image down here just a little bit, you're going to see these column headings are in Latin, and that's important to know. It also means that these names are likely going to be written in Latin, right? So Patricius, Jacobus, right? The names have been Guillermo Jacobus, right? These names have been written in Latin. And so that may not be the name you know them by, right? You may know this person as Jacob, or this person as William or Patrick. And so understanding a little bit about how Latin naming patterns work will help you make sure you've got the right person. So they would have been baptized under their Latin name, but very likely used an Irish version of their name as their common name. Okay, you'll see here this is their baptismal name is what that says there. And you have some additional information here, and so here's a good place where we can actually use that Latin glossary in order to understand what it is that we're looking at, or we can just take this word, come over here to Google Translate, type that word in, and you'll see that the word at the top of the heading in Latin, here's what it means in English. So just a quick, that's one of the reasons I love Google Translate, is because it's so quick. I don't have to go looking for anything. I can just type in a quick piece of information. And sometimes you have to zoom in a little bit to make sure you understand what it says or that you get it right? So this is information, domicilius. It's information about where they live. This is information about the parents. And then a word of caution, a lot of these records have a second page. So make sure that when you're looking at a record, and this should be standard regardless of what kind of record you're working with, but always make sure you go to the next page just to make sure you're not missing anything. In this case, there is additional information on this second page. So if I come back here, this is the baptismal name, the birth date, it looks like the parents' names, their residence. Then I come over here, this is the baptismal date, So one is the birth date, one's the baptismal date. This is the information about the priest who performed the baptism. And then if I was to look it up, this is probably going to be witnesses to that if I was to translate that particular heading. So always check that second page, because very often these were open book ledgers where information was written across both pages, but the way that they have been microfilmed is one page at a time. So you need to also, that was easy because we were looking at the top record. If you're looking at the fourth or fifth or sixth record down the page, you also need to make sure that you're looking at the right record when you go to the second page. So make sure you count carefully and look at that. So those are the baptismal records. And they're just phenomenal information. Keep in mind, anytime you see witnesses on records, on any church records, but Catholic records as well, that you always look at who the witnesses are. Those witnesses, they're very often family members of some sort, maybe not immediate family, but sometimes cousins or in-laws. So always make sure you look at those records. Okay, now this is what the marriage register looks like. This is an 1892 marriage register. Again, you're going to see the form or the book is in Latin, so you're going to need to get out that Google Translate so that you understand what the column headings mean. But once you understand what those column headings mean, then you can read quickly across this page to understand what it is that you are looking at. So here's an interesting one, Nomina sponsorum. Just come over here. I can just type that in. Helps if I spell it correctly, sponsorum, okay, the names of the spouses, okay, so here we have the names of the people that are getting married, Timothy and Bridget, or, John and Kate. You're going to have their surname, you're going to have their residence, parents' names, their parents' residence, and I'm not sure what that is. I'd have to look that up as well. Again, always remember, go to that second page. You're going to find additional information. In this case, it's the actual date that the marriage occurred and who performed the marriage, and then the witnesses, the names of those witnesses, and their residence. So always pay attention to all the information on a particular record. It's going to provide you with more information about the family and further avenues for research. Unfortunately, it's only the names of, if I come back here to this record, it's only the names of the couple and their fathers who are indexed, which is another reason why the index, the job of the index is to get you to the record. The record then often has more information, like the names of those witnesses, that could provide further clues to other family members. Another thing you might want to get in the habit of doing is, once you find a particular set of records or a particular record for an ancestor, is do a search in that particular parish for others with the last name. So I've got this Michael Connolly here, married in Ballon, and so if I just come over here and I do a search for, if I edit my search, I'm going to get rid of that first name. I'm going to type in that location. It's down here at the bottom of my list. I'm going to mark that location exact so that I only see Connollys who are from that specific location and do a search. you're going to find, see if there's any others of that surname married in that same location. In this case, it's just the record for Michael and Bridget. But if Michael had siblings who were also married in that parish, you would see them show up here. So always do a secondary search whenever you find a record in a particular database. See what other family members exist in that location by just putting in a last name and the place and marking that place exact. Very often you'll find siblings, cousins, sometimes even parents if they've lived in that parish for a long time. So those are the marriage registers. And then finally, we have the death and burial registers. Again, you're going to want to check that database description down at the bottom of the page. That will tell you exactly which parishes are included in this particular database so that you know before you search if the record you're looking for even exists in this particular database. And then once you find the record that you're interested in, always remember to view that original record. And in this case, not only is it in Latin, but because it's such an old record, 1811 in this case, it's not really in a form. It's just kind of written almost free-handed in columns. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to read, but certainly very valuable. And again, always look for others with the same last name living in the same location. In this case, these registers are a single page, actually just one line, but always just double check the next couple of pages. Again, you're looking for family members, you're looking to see how the records are organized. Understanding how those records are organized will help you understand how better to use them and what clues you can derive for your genealogy research. So those are the Irish birth and baptism, marriage, and death and burial records. And those were just added yesterday. There's more than 500,000 of them. Remember, use Google Translate so that you can understand or interpret those Latin column headings. And remember to always check the second images, particularly on those baptismal and marriage registers, because they almost always contain a second page. The burial registers don't always, just so that you know how those are organized. Now, the last thing that we can talk about today here is DNA. If the question is how Irish are you, nothing like a DNA test to answer that question once and for all. If you have not yet taken the Ancestry DNA test, let me just show you really briefly my results. As you can see here, if I make this just a little bit bigger for you, I am 50% British, 33% Irish, and 11% Western European with some additional trace regions that show up in my DNA. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about this DNA ethnicity estimate is that it shows me how migration patterns and also just movement over time causes some of these locations to overlap. If I was to click on any one of these, it would then zoom me in to a specific location. So this is my Irish, and Irish DNA is found typically in Ireland, but it can also be found as far out as Scotland and Wales and England, and even sometimes a little bit further out, which is this third circle, almost reaching to France. Okay, so it just explains or helps me understand that even though I'm 33% Irish, that Irish DNA could be found in other locations as well because of, again, migration over time. Ancestry.com has also provided you with a couple of fun things. One here is how you compare to the typical person native to that region. So I have 33% Irish DNA in my ethnicity estimate. The typical native is 95% Irish, which is, interesting to compare. Not all countries have that high of a percentage. If I scroll down a little bit more, it explains some diversity about the ethnicities in Ireland, what other ethnicities show up in people who live there. And then if I scroll down further, we've got articles that have been written by historians and professional genealogists who have gone through and explained some of the history of that particular location over time, how migration patterns have affected the DNA of that region, how invasion over time has affected the DNA of that region. just lots of different really great pieces of information, maps and articles and images that you can use to understand a little bit more about the particular ethnicities that are going to show up in your ethnicity estimate. So I come back up here to the top, and then I can click on that, and it takes me right back to my original map, which shows all three of my major ethnic breakdowns. So if that's something that you haven't done yet, I would strongly encourage you to go ahead and take the Ancestry DNA test and find out once and for all just how Irish are you. And let me just remind you that just because you have a parent who is Irish doesn't mean you inherited all of their Irishness. It also means that siblings can have different degrees of different percentages of a certain ethnicity. So the more people in your family that you get tested, the more interesting discussions you can have about who's more Irish than whom. This weekend, as we head into St. Patrick's Day, I hope that you'll all recognize that whatever percentage of Irish you are, there are resources available to you to research more and come to understand more about your Irish ancestors. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.